The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
The Dave Hooker Show. A presentation of Off the Hook Sports. Objective insight, expertise, top guests. Available on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the Off the Hook Sports app. Download now for free. Also available on offthehooksports.com.
I compute and obey.
Now to Dave Hooker.
Ready.
All right, let's get it rolling as we have a big show on tap. We'll tell you a little bit more about Arkansas. 5 Hogs to watch for the Vols. Caleb will give a pick suey after each and every hog that he points out. Also, Georgia-Alabama, highest-rated college football regular season game ever. It validates the college football playoff. But
in 7 years, not ever.
It's in 7 years, excuse me. But Caleb is going to argue with me later that the regular season is still not as significant, but I say it's more significant because of the college football playoff. Addison Nichols, former Tennessee offensive lineman, now with Arkansas, said he just needed more. He just needed more, and that's why he went to Arkansas. We'll read into those comments. Are Tennessee fans and you okay with winning ugly? And our Heisman watch, bank on it. I don't think Nico Iamaleava can win it, but Caleb has an argument to retort. All right, we bring in right now Will West of the Sports Animal. We want to remind you the program represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. Other lawyers say they'll go to trial. They won't. They'll settle and settle for less. banksandjones.com. Will West, how are you, sir?
Doing fantastic. Thanks for having me again, guys.
Hey, we appreciate having you on. Now, we start with the hard-hitting stuff that we got into yesterday. I'm sure you heard that Sam Pittman couldn't pronounce Nico Iamaleava's last name. So we said, could he spell it? Well, obviously that's a no. So then we said, could he spell lasagna? And I'll just start with that with you. If you had to bet a mortgage payment on Sam Pittman, can he spell lasagna or not, what would you say?
Oh, no, absolutely not. No way in the world. No way in the world. Now, I will say, I think he could spell Budweiser because I think he's seen that enough in his life that he could put all of that together. There is no chance that an offensive line coach, it's an old head like Sam Pittman, can spell lasagna.
It's not even that hard of a word, though.
No.
But we all three completely agree on it.
Sam Pittman probably thinks if you can spell lasagna, you're not focusing enough on ball. So.
Yeah, I don't know if he's like full-on Tom Thibodeau, Bill Belichick, but I think there's a little bit of like a happy, good nature. There's a little bit of Mike Leach there with Sam Pittman is what I would say.
The whole he's likable thing, why is that? I mean, I almost feel like we feel sorry for him.
I think he's a good dude, and let's be very honest. Dave, you've been around this a while. Caleb, you've been around this a while. I don't know if I met 5 coaches that are good dudes. So when you find one that is a good dude, and he is just a good dude, he's kind of normal and but a normal old head type guy that probably super enjoys canned beer and has probably said, "Watch how fast I can drink this" at some point in time in his adult life. That's what Sam Pittman is. He's a little bit relatable. He's not as myopic as most coaches are. There's nothing out there about him trying to cover up violent crime against women, and that's a rarity in college football. So I just think he is a pretty likable guy. He's kind of great. It's kind of, you can talk to him and he can hold a normal conversation. It's very not Butch Jones, not Derek Dooley, just like he and Chaney were just kind of normal dudes when you talk to them. And Chaney was just kind of the crazy football coach that was a normal dude. And then he played the character when he got on the field and started screaming wild things at practice. One of the reasons we could no longer do live videos at practice was because of the stuff Jim Chaney would say when he and Sam Pittman were there. But they're just kind of fun. He's a fun, likable guy that doesn't have the same skeletons in his closet that a lot of other college coaches have.
That's very true. And I would rather be known as likable than Billy Napier's detail oriented. And I still don't know how that makes you a great coach.
I also, every time, it's one of those things like, again, we've all done this a while. When you hear we do things the right way, you know the one thing that coach doesn't do is things the right way. Whenever you hear a coach is detail-oriented, what that usually means is they're tripping over dollars to pick up pennies. The football version, whatever the football version of tripping over dollars to pick up pennies is, they're usually worried about the wrong things. You have your exceptions, Saban, Kirby, really anybody from the Parcells tree. They usually, now Matt Patricia, there's that. But usually those guys are detail-oriented in the right way. But then you have other things like Derek Dooley, who I would just say I was at a car dealership when he was picking up his comped car he got for that he got for being the coach at Tennessee. And he had sent a printed diagram of how the car was supposed to be laid out with his stuff, the direction the umbrella was supposed to be in, the things like that, with that lays in his back seat. Like guys that are worried about things that aren't the thing. And sometimes when you hear detail-oriented, that's what that means. And I think Billy Napier probably falls into that category.
Now, I would agree. If you don't do something great like Saban defensive backs, Josh Heupel, offensive guru, and I'm not comparing them, I just think there's one thing that stands out, but I don't really know, and I never knew what Derek Dooley did incredibly well compared to other coaches. I think you got to have something to hold your hat on. Let's
Real
go
quick,
ahead. Yes.
Sorry, I just have to point that stood out the very first press conference of Derek Dooley. I don't know if you guys remember when he was asked like what his style is and what he likes to do. He's like, "Well, I think you really got to be good at everything." And I'm like, that's like when you ask somebody like, "What newspaper do you read?" And they're like, "I read everyone. I read every newspaper."
Yeah.
I'm like, "No, you need to name one thing you do."
Absolutely. Let's get to today's tough question as we're off and rolling. Please click that like and subscribe button. We greatly appreciate that. Today's tough question brought to you by Hound Dogs of Knoxville. Champions look good in orange.
Today's tough question. Take a side. Take a stand. The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of offthehooksports.com.
So I was asked this by a couple of different people, including a Nashville radio station this morning. And I was asked this yesterday. So I'm just going to lay it out there to you and go where you would like to with it, Will. And that is Arkansas a trap game for Tennessee?
If it was not coming off, look, I don't think it is for Tennessee. I think for all of us it is. But I don't think for Tennessee and their players or Josh Heupel it necessarily is. They don't have the voodoo spooky thing that we all do with the Tennessee-Florida matchup. If all of us that are local or have covered the team for a long time or are fans of the team, if you think about like a junior on this team right now, well, we beat them 2 years ago. They beat us last year. We need to avenge that win. That's probably as far, but we're 20 points better than they are. The line is 20 points right now for Tennessee against Florida. So I don't think they have the same thought process. Now, the Florida game could end up being a trap game if they're looking ahead to Alabama, especially if they handle their business at Arkansas. But you're also coming off of a bye. So you've had a lot of time. It isn't like you're coming off of an emotional win, and then now you're going right into playing this team that you're supposed to dog walk, and then you have a huge game coming off of it. Frankly, for most of these guys, Arkansas is probably a bigger game than the Florida game for them. Even though for all of us, that probably seems a little crazy. We all have this thing that, like, it's not just football when Tennessee plays Florida. Because, you know, we were here when Will Muschamp was talking about how happy he was the Tennessee fans went home upset. I just don't think for them it is viewed as a trap game because I don't think they view the Florida game the same way that we do.
It's on our poll question. Is Arkansas a trap game for the Vols? Yes, better than their record. No, Vols are coming off a bye. Caleb, what say you? And then I'll share my thoughts.
Yes, I think it's absolutely a trap game for a couple of reasons. For starters, guys, I think I've been there. Dave's been there. Will, I'm not sure if you've been there. I'm sure you have. But Fayetteville's a tough place to play with those fans. Arkansas actually has some of the rowdiest fans, and Sam Pittman is probably buying them all Budweiser. So there is that. And we all remember the 99 game where Tennessee was number 2 in the BCS. They actually got up to number 2 ahead of undefeated Virginia Tech. We thought they were a lock to go back to the national title. And then they drop a noon game to Arkansas, 28-24, in a revenge game for them from the year before. It's a dangerous place to play. On top of that, Arkansas is significantly better than their 3-2 record indicates. The rule of college football, as our friend of the show Josh Pate says, is the rule of college football over any other sport is you're not what your record says. And Arkansas is the classic case of that. They, if not for blatant in-game mismanagement by Sam Pittman, they would be 5-0 right now easily. And so this is a dangerous team that I think they got to take seriously.
Here are my thoughts, Will, and I want you to play off this if you don't mind. I think every game on Tennessee's schedule is a trap game other than Alabama and Georgia, because I believe they are more talented and better coached than all of those teams except for those two. So I think if you're truly a national championship contender, every one of those games are trap games. And if you don't have your mojo right, if you don't take to practice in a mature fashion, there are a lot of teams out there, Kentucky down the road included. Florida's looked better than I thought last week. So, I mean, I think every game's a trap game if you show up and you're not ready to go.
It can be like, and I guess I kind of look at the trap game as you're coming off of a big game. You have an opponent you're supposed to beat. You're going back into another big game. And I just don't know that these kids look at it as Florida as a big game. So that's the one thing that I would say. I'm sure they know to the fan base it's a big game, but especially when you're 3-touchdown favorite almost, I think that could be tough for you to say, well, I'm overlooking this team to get to the next team. And that's kind of what I look at as a trap game for them. But I'll agree with you here. And part of this to me, why I think it's a concerning game is styles make fights. We just watched last week, Lane Kiffin decided, I'm going to try to beat you, Mark Stoops, at what he does. And none of that made any sense to me whatsoever. It was kind of like when Ronda Rousey lost to Holly Holm, and instead of just taking her to the ground and breaking her arm, Ronda Rousey was going to stand up and box with her. And I'm like, why would you have the hubris to try to beat somebody at their game? I do wonder, especially with the way Tennessee is played and the style of play, the game plan against NC State and against Oklahoma, Sam Pittman's really good at coaching up front. He is. Their strength and conditioning programs are going to be good under Sam Pittman. So if you walk in here thinking you're going to throw the ball 23 times, run the ball 44 times, this could end up just being one you lose because you were dumb like that, because you had a bad game plan. But again, I do come from the Leach school of 50% run, 50% pass is 100% stupid. Throw the dang ball. Now, if they have 3 on the line of scrimmage and drop 8 in the coverage, you got to run the football, do what you got to do. But this is a game that I think they are well coached enough. I think Taylon Green's a good enough player. I think they're good enough up front that you can't just roll the headgear out and get a win because our defense is dominant and we can run the ball. I think that you have to have the full complement of what Josh Heupel usually brings to the table. And we haven't seen that yet for Tennessee. So they could lose, but I don't know that it's because they're overlooking Arkansas, if that makes sense. But do you guys look at a trap game as where the team is overlooking this to get to the bigger game after it?
I think you have to be careful if you're Tennessee that you're not overlooking everybody for the Alabama and Georgia game. I guess that was my thought there, because it's hard not to watch that game on Saturday, especially an off week as a player, and say, and I can't wait to play those guys. But whoa. You've got to get a lot better before you get to that point, and you've got to beat teams before you get to those games.
Yeah, I would say that that's a great point. And also, I think, Will, you bring up a point. A trap game is more, I do say it's overlooking, but I say the teams best equipped to catch you off guard when you're overlooking are the teams that like to make a game ugly. And that would be Arkansas. The most standout one to me is Will Muschamp, of all people, upsetting Tennessee in 2016 with Josh Dobbs when the Vols were coming off a bye. And wasn't it, 3 years later when Will Muschamp, had a 4-8 team, and they somehow upset Georgia in overtime that year? And if you can make a game ugly, you can be the team. You can be the guy that traps teams. I mean, heck, Tennessee in the early 2000s, how many games did they win on the road as double-digit underdogs? They did that all the time with Fulmer.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say that. No, go ahead.
You.
Okay. It can be that, right? It absolutely can be that. And we don't know the health of the offensive line yet either. Now, there are things about Arkansas as I'm watching them this week where it really feels like people are figuring out what they do. There's also one thing. They run these RPOs with a base old school zone read where the backside defensive end is unblocked. that backside defensive end's James Pierce on this team, and they did it against Texas A&M, and those two guys actually right now, Mel Kiper has rated higher than James Pierce as far as defensive ends for the 2025 class right now. And it was a bad decision, but it seems like Taylor Green, like you can see these weaknesses that are there. They leave the backside defensive end unblocked on the zone read, and so as long as James Pierce isn't trying to set an edge, because Taylor Green doesn't run left because he literally never runs left under any circumstance, then James Pierce is just going to go scot-free to the mesh point. And if they do that, like I could see Tennessee just beating them down. Taylor Green also doesn't necessarily just tuck and run when it's not there at first. He kind of rolls right, hangs out, uses his athleticism to buy him time, and then throws the ball up for grabs, which is a little bit weird. They don't do as much of the Petrino timing stuff as they did. They threw that Tesla kid a little bit in the slot using it, but it's not there a ton. It's very different from what we've seen from Petrino in the past. But I think it just seems like, especially whether they like -5 the last 2 weeks in the turnover battle, seems like people are catching up to what Petrino has. And I don't know if he has another wrinkle, because I would have thought he'd use it in the second half against A&M where you blew that lead, or in that Auburn game where you kept turning the football over. It just seems like they're getting caught up too, and they also don't make adjustments at the half. And if you know anything about Bobby Petrino, it makes me think they don't have adjustments to make. So, because he's a guy that does make adjustments. So I think that the specific matchups here, as long as what you said, Dave, as long as Tennessee has prepared this entire week, I think as long as the game plan isn't one where you expect to make this 1986 Joe Paterno football, I do feel like Tennessee's probably going to win this game by a couple touchdowns.
Yeah, I do too. Now, you addressed something, or maybe in Caleb, the injury report comes out, and Lance Hurd and John Campbell Jr. not even listed as questionable. I don't know whether or not to believe that, Will, because I'll be honest with you. I think Josh Heupel's played the other side of it. Hey, this guy's going to play. This guy's going to play. And he's not ready to play. And I knew it before. You probably knew it before. I mean, Cooper Mays was an example. I feel like I'm missing one, Caleb. There's been another one out there. Oh, well, Hurd before the Oklahoma game. So I don't know if he's playing games with us or not. Do you take the injury report with a grain of salt, or do you say Tennessee's now healthy at offensive tackle? Let's roll.
I take it with a grain of salt. I do. And part of that is maybe they're okay right now, but both of those guys all through camp, they play, be in practice, miss practice, playing, you know what I mean? Non-contact, contact. They just were all over the place. Got an e-brace on, doesn't have an e-brace on. So there's like, I do think part of it is probably nagging day-to-day stuff, which means literally at any point in time they could be removed. I also think Josh Heupel, look, at some point in time, the SEC is going to find a coach for lying on their injury report. There's a pretty good chance Josh Heupel's the guy.
I totally agree. I think he is the leader in the clubhouse to be fined and called out by the SEC.
Yes. So I don't necessarily buy he is that coach that keeps his hand close to the chest. So I just don't know that we're getting the full truth, but maybe we are, and we'll find out this week.
All right. What the H? Somebody is already kind of got me off kilter on our poll question, and we changed that. That is, do you care if the Vols win ugly with defense? Not at all, just a little bit. Let's get Will's reaction to that. What the H, brought to you by the Hemp House.
What the? What was he thinking?
Release the hounds.
The Dave Hooker Show.
Keep cool.
A presentation of OffTheHookSports.com.
Okay, I love our audience. I think we have an incredible audience, very bright. But there are some people that are voting just a little bit. Do you care if the Vols win ugly with defense? Not at all. 80%, just a little bit, at about 20%. Will, what do you make of that? And just in general, the fan expectations. You talk to Tennessee fans all the time. Are Tennessee fans okay with winning ugly? Should they be?
Yeah, they are. I would say this: you shouldn't be, because that falls into the winning is a great deodorant situation. Points are king in this era of football. You tell me the last team that was great winning simply with defense. Even Kirby had to go get Todd Monk and open things up. And last year they had a record-setting offense, and they still were conservative in some games, and it was enough to bite them. To be elite. Now, if you just want to be good, I think Mark Stoops has proven you can just be good with really physical players by winning with defense, ball control, and all of those things. Who's great that's not trying to score 40 a game? You have to be trying to score 40 a game. Points are king. And so I think if you do it, it's a very short-term strategy. I don't think it's a strategy. It's a tactic. And I would want to be strategic, not tactical, when it comes to the way that I want my football program to perform. Now, in the short term, again, though, this week, if you win with defense, you win with defense. It's fine. Oklahoma, you didn't have to do anything because their offense is terrible and Brent Venables isn't a good coach. And then NC State, you will change Robin Nye's offense when he's in the casket. He ain't changing it for his players. So it made sense to do it in those games, in my opinion, and I didn't have a problem with it. If that's your game plan long term, it is impossible for you to be elite. And I think with Tennessee being the number 4 team in the nation, you're trying to be elite, right?
Yes, no doubt. Is Michigan, would they be an anomaly last year because they were primarily ground-based defense? They weren't lighting people up, so to speak.
Yeah, no, and they were trying to win at the line of scrimmage. I don't know that they were trying to win with defense, right? They were trying to win along the line of scrimmage. So they were running the football a lot. Now, when you have those players and the opponent's playbook, it usually helps matters that you probably can be able to run the ball. I've always said this: if you have the mid-90s Cowboys offensive line, then yeah, you can go pound the rock and win a lot. But kids don't block like that anymore. That's just not the thing. And we watched last year. How many times did we see teams last year of these coaches before the season? We're going to be more balanced this year. We're going with more 12 personnel. We're going to and the games get more compacted. And all of them either had to get away from it or they got fired or they're on the hot seat right now for trying to do that. Even Nick Saban last year, Jaylen Milroe say that they would walk in with he hires a West Coast offense guy. We're going to ground and pound, and Saban at the half would have to go change the offensive game plan to fit what they could do, because that's just not how you win in football. And talking to some people in the high school game and in the recruiting game, and even some parents of players who played themselves, all of them say, dude, that's because none of them block like that. Like, no one has their hand in the dirt anymore in high school football. So it takes a long time to develop an offensive line where you can win that way. Michigan just kind of caught lightning in a bottle, and COVID years helped that.
Will, may I offer this since you mentioned him? We have a new viewer who commented on the program. It was like the middle of the night. My phone went off. No joke.
Yes.
Apparently, Conor Stallions is out there commenting, and I guess he likes Dave and Caleb. So maybe we can get some game plans for him.
I look, okay, well, what do you guys feel about Conor Stallions? Because I will just tell you, there's someone that we all know, all of us, that has told me, when I was on Tennessee staff, I used to work at the other staff, and I would just sit and read their signals and whisper it into the offensive coordinators. And I would just whisper into his ear, this is what they're about to run. And now that's different than we're going to video it and we're going to go full on Belichick and we're going to match it up with your signals on the sideline and all of those things. How big of a deal is it to know that? Because some players I've seen say, oh, it's no big deal at all. Everybody knows what everybody's doing. Everybody knows beforehand if you're going to run or pass. It's not a big deal. Is that a big deal to you guys? I look at to me, it's the conspiracy more so than just the act.
Yes, it's Jim Harbaugh thumbing his nose knowing he was going to the NFL and saying, I don't care what you do, NCAA. I thought two things stood out about Conor Stallions, and that was in that documentary. One, I believe he was a bit of a savant. I think he saw the play calls really quickly. And two, I understand the NCAA rule why you can't travel because smaller schools can't do that. That's primarily what stood out to me. But do you think that affected the Tennessee-South Carolina game? Yeah,
100%. It's the only thing that makes sense to me. In the absence of any other evidence, that's the one thing that seems to make sense to me is that I think – and do I know? No. Not saying it happened? No. Do I think there's a real possibility that was what happened in that game? Yeah, I do. It didn't make any sense watching so much South Carolina. I've watched every South Carolina game leading up to that game, but I always do that. Whoever Tennessee plays, I watched all of their games. And if I have time, I'll watch it twice. You get to later in the season, it becomes more difficult. But it did not make sense what Tennessee had done, what South Carolina had done. That didn't make a lot of sense to me. But I do buy that there were also all of the issues in the locker room ahead of time, just because I was told that by so many players on that team, that there were legitimate James Banks, Hendon Hooker beef, Joe Milton stepping in and choking James Banks out. I believe all those things did happen, just because a lot of people that don't really hang out with each other would have to be lying to me and all saying exactly the same story. But I do think there's a very real possibility that South Carolina had Tennessee's play calls.
Interesting. What the H brought to you by the Hemp House, the premier hemp dispensary online with a wide variety, great selection, and strict standards to ensure you only receive the best in CBD or Delta products. Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com. Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com. Link down below. Use the promo code HOOKED. That's HOOKED for 10% off. Caleb?
So getting back to the concept of Tennessee winning ugly, I want to know y'all's thoughts about this because we all were in college. Well, I may have been. Well, I don't know when you were in college, but I know Dave was
a long time.
Early 2000s, yeah.
Okay, so Will, you were right when it happened, and Dave, you were before it. But okay, let's talk a little history of Tennessee just as the college for a minute, because Tennessee, they instituted the lottery scholarship in 2003, and this is relevant where I'm going, guys. It became a much more international school after that, and it's a much less localized school now than it was 25, 30 years ago when Tennessee was in their heyday as a football program. There's a lot of students that have come through the school since then that knew nothing about Tennessee football, that were not fans in the 90s and the 2000s, that have only seen Tennessee during the decade and the era of dysfunction. Danny White is a marketing guy. You see that with his hire of Kim Caldwell. He is hiring to put butts in the seats with offense. Let's just call it what it is. Is it important for Tennessee to win entertainingly just to win over this new crop of students that have come through and only seen dysfunction for 20, 25 years and that are going to keep coming into the school?
I don't know that it is necessarily, because if you're winning, people show up, right? Like everybody front runs to some extent, right? Like right now, I dread Sundays watching the Giants play football because they are hot garbage. But when they're winning, I don't care how they're winning. The same guy, I'm yelling about Danny Dimes 2 years ago, and this year I'm like, if you don't get this guy off of my television right now, I'm going to vandalize my own property. So I think that people show up if you win or not. But I will. The thing that I think Danny White tries to do is he realizes if you have offense, one, you get fan base, you get money, you're not behind, you get interest, you get those things. Kids like it more. It becomes easier in recruiting for you to be able to sell the. Again, he's a marketing guy. He's marketing his program not just to the students, not just to the boosters, not just to the fan base, but also to the kids, to players, to potential recruits, to television networks. And offense sells. I also think it's one of the things Nick Saban said a few weeks ago, on the Sports Center before game day. Splash plays cover up or close the gap, or close a talent gap. And I think that for Tennessee, if you're looking at it saying we don't have the talent that Alabama does, then what do? You need a decided schematic advantage. Lady Vols don't have the same talent because they got so far behind in NIL when it comes to the way. Look, for the long time, Lady Vols, we're not going to pay basketball players to come here. Well, UConn and South Carolina are, so good luck, right? So they fell way behind. To me, this is now that they are going to use NIL to be able to pay basketball players, this is a way for you to close that talent gap, but it also is a way for people to pay attention to your product because kids will look at that and say, oh, that's fun. I want to be a part of that. Oregon, how many kids were Oregon fans and went to Oregon because of what Chip Kelly was doing and how fun that offense was and all the uniforms and stuff like that? Like, it just kind of creates hype. I don't think there's as much sizzle around Colorado football if Prime wasn't running air raid. So if you know what I mean, if he was trying to run the ball 50 times a game, throw it 20, if he was doing what Mike Elko's doing at A&M, I don't think there's a whole lot of sizzle to what's going on there. A&M now better than they were when Johnny, in that Sumlin era. But in the Sumlin era, they got more headlines just because they were an offensive team.
Okay, let me ask you this. And I mean this realistically, because Jimmy has reported before and on this show that Danny White likes points because it's easier to market high-scoring teams than it would be to, I don't know, market a Michigan program, despite the fact that they won and what they did last year. So do you think at any point, let's say Tennessee wins its next two games ugly, the 25-15 Oklahoma thing, do you think at any point Danny White would have the gall to go to Josh Heupel and say, good win? Be nice if you could score a few more points.
As long as you're winning, I think you're fine. Now, if you go get just look, because I'll be real, if you try to win with defense and ball control and running the football, Alabama's going to whoop your hind parts. Like that.
No, I agree.
Good, right? One, they have better players than you, so you can't say, well, we're going to slow the game down. They have better players than you. They're going to beat you down. Two, that Caleb DeBoer is good, right? Like that's what we saw Saturday until he decided to Jose Mourinho style park the bus was what happens when you give an elite. And if I was a Tennessee fan, I'd be happy about that. Not happy about an Alabama win, but seeing what happens when an elite offensive mind finally gets elite players. We've never seen that, right? So if you're looking at the way Tennessee's improving in recruiting, if I'm a Tennessee fan, I'm a little encouraged by how dominant Alabama could be, because I think that could be you in the coming years. That's something that I would pay attention to. But I think as long as he's winning, I don't think Danny White's going to say anything. But you start taking some L's and you're trying to win like Parcells did back in the day, yeah, he's gonna say something to you.
Okay, so Will, let's kind of reroute this, because I think when we're talking winning ugly, I think the perception meant like just winning by defense alone and like the old school 2000 Ravens. But like, no, let's talk winning ugly like we talked about with Michigan. When I think winning ugly, I mean ball control, but you're running the ball, you're scoring, but you're not running a lot of possessions because you're running the ball a lot. And say you may win a game like 24-14, but you only had 5 possessions and you scored on 4 of them. Does that count as winning ugly, and would that be okay?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. I also don't think like one of the reasons like Alabama and Georgia have been so dominant is Kirby and Saban drilled into their players' heads. It's so catch tackle is okay, run tackle is okay. I've spoken to I'll just tell you, the guy that kind of pointed it out to me the first time that I started asking other players about it was Eric Ainge, and he talked about when they played good teams that was just catch tackle. He's like, we weren't ready for that. Our guys were way too impatient, and they started freaking out because we didn't have splash plays. So a 4-yard gain, like Cut's telling us on the sideline, hey, no, 4-yard gain, good. Take that. We're moving the chains. We're on schedule. And that's just not the way players are wired anymore, especially at the college level. The NFL level they'll take it, but the college level, they're not wired that way. But I do think – so I also think it's very hard to continuously win games like that, like the way – and even Michigan was in the 30s a lot. I think that you can win games with ball by using ball control 31-24. I think it's very difficult to continue to win games 23-13. And ball control, at some point in time, you're going to play somebody with better players than you and you lose. And that's just kind of what happens. Because I do think ball control comes down a lot to talent, unless there's just a decided coaching advantage in one way or the other. And right now, while Tennessee's recruiting's improved, like if Tennessee won the national title this year, they'd be only the second team in the history of college football to do it that was not in the blue chip ratio. And that first team had Cam Newton. So, and I don't know that Cam Newton's walking through that door for Tennessee. Anybody like Cam Newton's on Tennessee's roster right now. So I think it could, the hypothetical, I think what you're saying is fair. I just don't know if that hypothetical can exist for Tennessee specifically. But I do think fans would accept it as long as there are wins there. Because most people just fall on the ball, right? They're not paying attention to, well, why aren't you doing this? There's not a lot of that. Like I was watching that Alabama-Georgia game. I'm like, Kirby, why in the world are you staying in zone? I know you don't want Milroe to kill you running the football, but they're just eating you alive in this zone. Like Kalen DeBoer has you dead to rights, and you're just staying in the zone. I don't think most fans are paying attention to that necessarily. They're kind of following the ball, having a good time. It's social. Not that people don't know football, but when you don't work in it, you don't have to focus on it like that. And so I don't know that people are going to care a whole lot as long as you're getting dubs. Now, if you're winning like Beamer Ball 13-9, man, that's where the law of diminishing returns kicks in.
Good point. Will, fantastic stuff. You're on 3-7 on the Sports Animal. Do a great job. And we can't tell you how much we appreciate your time.
Hey, thanks a lot, guys. I appreciate you.
Thanks, buddy. Have a blessed day. That is Will West, nice enough to join us each and every Thursday with Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. What did you think of Conor Stallions commenting on some of our stuff out there in the YouTube land?
Well, are we sure that is Conor Stallions? I hate to be.
No, we're not.
Because Conor Stallions has 1 L, not 2 L's. So I hate to.
Close enough. Close enough.
Dave's like, I'm taking the win. Forget that. I'm taking the win.
No, I did message him. I was like, are you the Conor Stallions? And so we'll determine that. But I don't think that's him. I think that's a nifty little name. But it would be fun to get him on the program. Maybe he could do some breakdowns for us, some signal economics or something. I don't know what we would.
Are you signaling something you would like to do?
Yes, I would definitely like to have Conor Stallions on the program if that's possible. All right, go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button. It is time for the stat of the day, which is a fantastically awesome stat of the day. Today is brought to you by our good friend Medicare Misty, and it has to do with the Arkansas Razorbacks. not having a top 5 win at home in a long, long time, since 1999. And guess who it came against? Stat of the day brought to you by Medicare Misty. That's not Medicare Misty.
19 years this year. Well, I've been in the community since 1993. You're getting a lot of information. Unlike when you were working, they made the choice for you. Now you have to make the choice. Come to us and let us help you make it easy. Call Medicare Misty, MedicareMisty.com or 423-777-5577. Let us help them sleep at night.
And we call her Medicare Misty.
All right, Caleb. So when's the last time that Arkansas has beaten a top 5 team at home in Fayetteville, where the currency is still chickens and pies?
Well, you gave it away when you said 1999, because we all remember that game in 1999. It would have been when they beat Tennessee. And for those who don't remember, that was the year Florida State and Virginia Tech were both undefeated and played for the national title. People thought that was already happening because Tennessee had lost to Florida. But for those who don't know, because of schedule strength in the BCS formula, the week before the Arkansas game, Tennessee had moved up to number 2 in the BCS despite having a loss and despite the fact that they weren't going to play for the SEC title. So it looked like they were going back to the national title game. And then they blew a 10-point lead to Arkansas. Clint Sterner went off. T. Martin. I remember that game very, very, very distinctly well. One of the things that stood out was that was the game that it was very obvious Jamal Lewis didn't want to run hard that year because he had about 2 plays where he should have had touchdowns where he stepped out of bounds.
Yep. Click like and subscribe. We would greatly appreciate that. And then coming up on the program, we are going to get to some comments by former Vol Addison Nichols about Tennessee. And I'm going to see if it ruffles your feathers. Also, does Arkansas have any advantage with Danico Slaughter in their backfield, their defensive backfield, who played for Tennessee and probably knows the Vols offense really well because he practiced against it? So all that and more. Stay tuned. But I think you're going to find these Addison Nichols comments pretty interesting. Give me 2 minutes. He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker, Off the Hook Sports.
Commercial Bank is your neighborhood bank. What makes us different from other banks? We understand that every customer has unique opportunities, challenges, and financial concerns. We don't expect you to fit into the same box as the next person or business. Whether it's purchasing a home, saving for your child's future, or planning for your next vacation, we're with you every step of the way to navigate life's big decisions. Commercial Bank. Life made better.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Vol collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the real sports fan goes to shop.
With our brand new location on Emory Road, Eye Care Optical is bringing East Tennessee's best eye care to your neighborhood. Doctors Johnston and Combs offer unmatched expertise and care without a trip to Knoxville. Eye Care Optical, now in Powell.
Are you ready to get strong? At NFC, we offer top-notch weight training and functional fitness, so you can build strength and improve your performance. Join today at NFC1.com or stop by any one of our 7 East Tennessee locations.
When the lights turn on and the game begins, you need a team you can rely on. Ray Varner Ford in Clinton's strong lineup of vehicles is crafted with the same dedication and hard work that drives our community. Experience quality and value in this pre-owned 2018 Ford Mustang convertible, $24,550, 2023 Ford Bronco Sport Big Bend, $29,789, 2022 Ford Escape SEL all-wheel drive, $26,975. Local you trust, pre-owned vehicles you can afford. Ray Varner Ford, built for the game.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys.
Excuse me, Your Honor.
Play to win, banksjones.com.
Who's this guy?
Hello, wizard!
The Dave Hooker Show,
Who?
a presentation of Off the Hook Sports.
What?
YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. back to Dave Hooker.
I guess Henry To'oTo'o would be one in the transfer portal that you're especially mindful of when Tennessee played another team. Have there been any others out there, Caleb, that you would point to and you would say that's a good storyline? Because there's a couple of good storylines we're going to talk specifically about now that used to be Vols and are now on another team and playing key significant roles. Has there been another instance of that you can think of off the top of your head?
I mean, when Cade Mays was starting at Georgia, that did stand out to a certain degree.
Okay. Well, but that was more, he went to Georgia.
Yeah, it wasn't a transfer.
Stand
You're
out
right.
for Georgia, vice versa, and giving some insight.
No, the closest I could say is Tennessee had a transfer who I think was loyal to another team while he was playing for Tennessee. And I'm going to go ahead and say who it is, CJ Leak. I firmly believe that there were some rumors that you were covering the team at the time, but there were rumors on message boards. I don't know how true it was that CJ Leak was helping Chris Leak with Florida in 2004 when Tennessee was playing Florida. Was helping Chris Leak with Tennessee's defense. I don't know how true that is.
That wouldn't surprise me at all. Okay, so new poll question on our YouTube page. How should Vols treat former teammates on Arkansas's team? Empathize. It's Arkansas. Finish them like the Mortal Kombat days, or just play as normal. Let's get to the comments by Addison Nichols. Can you pull those up right now? And I'm going to tell you that there's some extra motivation here. I believe that. But let's pull up the Addison Nichols comments. He, of course, would be Tennessee's second team center right now if something happened if he had stayed at Tennessee and something happened to Cooper Mace. I think that's William Satterwhite, and I think Satterwhite would eventually have passed him heading into the 2025 season. But Nichols probably would be the backup right now at center. So what did he have to say about going to Arkansas? Because he tried to be complimentary, then I thought he really took a shot at Tennessee, whether he meant to or not.
Okay, I'm trying to find the video, but I've got at least the quote.
Let's go with the quote.
I'm sorry?
Let's go with the quote.
Okay, so the quote was basically, he said, quote, Coach Heupel is a great guy, a great coach, and has a great program. Couldn't say a bad thing about him. Definitely learned a lot through my time there, but at the end of the day, I just didn't see myself hitting my full potential in the room I was in. Obviously, Coach Pittman is a huge, huge part of that decision to transfer to Arkansas. When Coach Mateos reached out, I had never heard of him. And when I started doing my research, that man has an incredible track record. The two of them combined, I don't think you'll ever find anything like that ever again. It was just one of those things where at the end of the day, I would be stupid not to come here.
Okay, keep going. There's a little bit more.
Let's see. And then he said later, he talked about his recruitment, and he said it's incredibly different from high school when he was being recruited. He said there's definitely more urgency with the short time frame that you have. It's nicer in the way that you don't get the high school fakeness because you know what you want, what you're looking for, and you can see through some of the BS. Which,
okay, so keep going. Keep going down to the comment that talks about needed more.
I already said that. I said that. He said, okay. Yeah, he said that. Where did I have that?
Well, needed more is the headline, and it was pulled from him. My question about that is, what more did he need? Tennessee's offensive coaches have proven they can develop offensive linemen. Cooper Mays,
I got it. You want the full quote? Sorry.
Yeah, go for it. Go for it.
I'm coming in as a center. Me leaving Tennessee had nothing to do with position. Like I said, nothing bad to say about the program at Tennessee. There's some great people. Coach Heupel does a tremendous job with the program and culture. I learned a lot about football and being a man during my time there. It's just one of those things where looking forward, I needed more. You're right. There it is.
Okay. I needed more is the thing that bothers me.
That's the only thing that bothers you. A lot of that quote bothers me.
Okay. You start first, because I think he tried to be complimentary, but at the end of the day, he was either shown the door or just realized he couldn't play. And who wouldn't be a little bit salty about that?
Yeah, I mean,
and for the record, based off what I've been told, he was not shown the door like a lot of the Tennessee defensive backs, like Danico Slaughter, who plays for Arkansas. Addison Nichols needed to improve greatly, but he was not a lost cause in Tennessee's coaches' minds.
Okay, well, he said at one point before the need and more, he said, I just didn't see myself hitting my full potential in the room I was in, which is a direct shot at Tennessee's development of offensive linemen, isn't it? And that's the one that bothers me. And then when he talked about recruiting, when he said, when your difference between transfer and recruiting is you can see through the fakeness and the BS. Is he saying Josh Heupel was fake on the recruiting trail? I mean, he said he doesn't have a negative thing to say about Josh Heupel, and then he threw a lot of shade at Josh Heupel. It's so a lot of it bothers me that he was doing this. But Dave, give me your thoughts, because give me your thoughts now on him on the needed more, because I might say something that may be a little bit controversial.
Well, the needed more.
They're like, that is total bullshit.
I mean, that's ridiculous, because you have Darnell Wright, who developed from a good offensive lineman to a first rounder. Cooper Mays has gone from everybody said he was undersized, not good enough, through this coaching staff and the previous one to some extent. Cooper Mays has been fantastic and turned into one of the best centers in the nation. So I have trouble believing that Tennessee can't develop offensive linemen. If that's what he's hinting around at, then shame on him, because what he said about becoming a man at Tennessee is just not true. He has to accept some of what happened. Listen, who did they run out there when Cooper Mays was hurt at the beginning of last year? Caleb.
It was Ollie Lane, right?
Right. I love Ollie Lane. Ollie Lane's going to be on the program tomorrow. But that was Addison Nichols' job to kind of lose, wasn't it? I mean, he came in and he was supposed to, at least by that point in his Tennessee career, pushing for a starting job or be a starter either at center or guard, right?
Yes, that was his second year. I think everybody thought that. No, actually, was that his third year? Or was it his second? It was one. Yeah, maybe it was his second. But yeah, everybody thought that it was going to be his to lose. By your second year as an offensive lineman, you should be capable as a backup in the rotation, right?
Yes. And that was his second year. But here's the issue. He didn't feel confident enough that he was going to be a starter over Andre Keurig at left guard, or obviously right guard, escapes my right guard. Spraggins. Yes. So he didn't feel confident that he would be a starter. So there's either one of two things here. Either he lacks confidence or he lacks physical ability. Now, it's one thing for a quarterback to transfer and say things didn't go right for me, I got an issue, because you only play one quarterback at a time. It's another if you're an offensive lineman and you're not ready to contribute by your third year, which this would have been at a high level. That's a major red flag to me. And while Tennessee may have not shown him the door, those comments make me think that they're better off without him. And I say that about a team that's not completely healthy on the offensive line.
Okay, so let me.
Caleb's mad.
No, I'm not mad, but yes. I have to ask this question. I have to ask this question seriously. Are we sure Addison Nichols isn't a semblance of truth in what he's saying? Because you bring up Darnell Wright, you bring up Cooper Mays, you bring up Ollie Lane coming in afterward. You just brought up Javonte Spraggins. What do all those players have in common?
They were recruited by Jeremy Pruitt. Is that what you're getting to?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Addison Nichols was a Josh Heupel signing. We are in year 4 of covering Josh Heupel at Tennessee, and there is still not one offensive lineman that he signed that is starting, that he signed out of high school, that has started on his offensive line and been reliable at all. And at some point, you brought up Darnell Wright. All right, Dave, I got to ask you this question. You covered football a long time. A guy like Darnell Wright playing right tackle. Was there really any development required with him? I mean, that's just a raw, amazing athlete that I think you and
Yeah.
I could into an NFL top 10 pick.
Good. Well, I don't know about that far, but he could do a backflip at 315 pounds. That's a pretty freaky athlete. But Cooper Mays is going to have a nice career in the NFL, I believe, and is maybe an All-American this year. He's second team All-SEC because Alabama has a really good center. I can't remember his name right off the top of my head, but I mean, you've got to say that they developed Cooper because Cooper showed up and Jeremy Pruitt didn't know where to play him. He played tight end, fullback, played everywhere else. He just liked his grit and determination. But most oftentimes, if you don't have a plan for a player, he gets lost in the shuffle. So you have to give Tennessee credit for helping develop Cooper Mays. And I'm talking about this current staff.
Are we sure he wasn't always a good center and Tennessee stumbled into him because with, I guess it was Brandon Kennedy was gone. They didn't have an option in 2021. And they're like, well, he was a center in high school. Let's plug him in. And that he just turned out to be very, very good. I mean, this is what I mean. It's hard. I'm raising some red flags about Glenn Ellery, guys. And I've been doing this for a little while now because I haven't seen him develop anybody through coming out of high school through the program yet. They keep going for transfers. And that you, at some point, guys, this is year 4. Let me ask you this, Dave. 2022. We were covering Tennessee in 2022. If I told you the secondary would be shored up as a unit before the offensive line, what would you have told me then?
I would have told you that I have no doubt that would be the case because I thought Tennessee had a gap in their offensive line that would show up in 2024. And you're seeing that when a tackle goes down and is not able to perform, you don't have anybody behind him. As I was told by somebody on within Tennessee's program, that's when things get interesting, talking about 2024, because they don't have any depth. There hasn't. I don't know that it's development, Caleb. I'll take umbrage with that. I don't think it's development. I think development's fine. What I think it is they didn't recruit the elite linemen often enough. And just like you said with Darnell Wright, more times than not, those guys are going to come through. But I don't think that they've got enough of those guys. You can only have so many overachievers, especially in the trenches, right?
True. I'm listening.
So, I mean, I think Cooper Mays is an overachiever, and I mean that as a compliment. I think Andre Currig is just about where he should be. I think Javonte Spraggins is about where he should be. I haven't seen much out of Lance Hurd. Dane Davis, I give a pass to because he's the utility man everywhere. Caleb, I think they've done a good job with John Campbell Jr., especially considering the injuries. So I don't have a problem as much with the development as who Josh Heupel recruited and landed 2 years ago.
Okay, but let me ask you this, and you're right. Let's be fair. Josh Heupel, I'll be fair, then I want to be unfair. Josh Heupel was less specific of who he could recruit at offensive line because Tennessee was so down that he kind of had to throw stuff at the wall and see what would stick. That had to be his recruiting strategy in the trenches. We agree with that, right?
Yes.
Fair enough. He signed during that period. I'm not going to count 2021 because we both agreed nobody in 2021 was the signee of his. But it would make him look worse if I did. But I'm not going to do it. I'll be fair. He signed, there were from 2022 through 2024, 3 recruiting classes up to this point. He signed 15 offensive linemen out of high school. 5 of them were 4-stars. You're telling me none of them? What are the chances none of them could be an overachiever or work their way into the rotation? Because none of them have.
This gets into recruiting, which is a little bit into my wheelhouse. I believe that there are too many 4-star players on the offensive and defensive line that get that designation. So I think there's a difference between being a high 4-star and a lower 4-star, if that makes sense. I'm not trying to split hairs, but the guys you're talking about, did Georgia really want them? Did Alabama really want them when they had the pick of the litter? I don't think they necessarily did, Caleb.
Yeah, but if you sign 15, let's just say they're all 3-stars. shouldn't the odds of probability be in your favor that like maybe 2 of them at least turn into overachievers? Like you're 0 for 15. Like this is a bad slump. I mean, I can go back, Dave, and I know it's the Fulmer years, and Fulmer for a while was the best line coach in college football. Guys like Scott Wells, who I don't think was highly recruited, turned out to be one of the best linemen in Tennessee football history. I mean, Tennessee had a plethora of guys that would come through the program and do that. And they haven't had anybody under Josh Heupel do that yet. I think it's a red flag that none of them, even if say none of them are 4 stars, say all 15 are 3 stars. If you have a good development program, don't at least 2 of them turn out to be decent? I mean, Wisconsin only signs 3 stars and they lead the NFL in offensive linemen.
Yeah, but look at who they're playing too.
No, they lead the NFL. These linemen end up going to the NFL and they lead the NFL in offensive linemen. And same with Iowa. Iowa only signs 3 stars, and they turn out more pro offensive linemen than anybody.
Well, I will tell you this, to your point, at Oklahoma not having, by the way, Larry Johnson III, I was reading his Pro Football Focus grades, did pretty well. So I would throw that to counter your argument because he's just a sophomore, and I think he's ready to go. They're always ready to go at work trucks, all about trucks that are actually available, trucks that help you maximize your profits by having the right work vehicle available now. Time is money. The perfect work vehicle doesn't break down, has all the space to carry what you need. That's what Work Trucks is intent on offering, while other dealerships just can't do it. Contracting is about time. Work Trucks saves you time with less back and forth trips. Trucks that pass the highest standards to be put to work. Process is also quick and easy when choosing a vehicle for work trucks, cargo vans, utility body trucks with an app hide, work bodies installed, pickup trucks of all sizes, anything special like cranes or dump trucks. Look at those trucks. Work Trucks supplies vehicles to people just like you, contractors, get you back on the road. No dealership run around. Contractors, Work Trucks. I'm serious. Service industry, Work Trucks. Tell them Off the Hook Sports sent you. And Dave Hooker said Work Trucks carries the highest quality of trucks. You need Work Trucks. Clinton Highway in Knoxville, downtown Birmingham. For the entire inventory, go to worktrucksllc.com. Work Trucks, they'll find the perfect truck, outfit it, make sure it fits your needs to a T. Work Trucks with an XLLC.com, proud supporters of the Tennessee Vols. So I guess the question is, getting back to our point, does Tennessee have the right work trucks in place, or are they not outfitting them well enough once they get here? If you had to choose one or the other, that's the biggest concern, and that is recruiting the right big work trucks to go to work or developing them into a proper work truck. Where is Tennessee in that regard? If you had to lay the blame of Tennessee not producing enough elite offensive linemen, which is fair, where does that blame lie? Is it recruiting or is it development? If you had to pick one.
The majority is recruiting. Because again, I think when you recruit certain types of caliber players, I think Josh Heupel's goal was always to get to a point to where he just recruited the offensive linemen, and there was not, I bring up Darnell Wright. Once you're recruiting at a certain level, you don't have to coach him. David Sanders will not have to be coached at Tennessee. I'm just going to say it. You can just plug him in and he's going to be good. But I think that development deserves some blame because there is something to say about development. Now, again, I brought up Wisconsin and Iowa. I'm sure, Dave, you know as well as I do. They have an entire statewide program solely focused on developing players into offensive linemen, right? Where they put their hand in the ground and it's just completely focused on just coaching that up from the time they're 10. And I don't think Tennessee's ever going to have that. But they did have how many linemen, when you covered the program, Dave, Scott Wells was just the first that came to mind. If you really hammered me down, I could think of more. There were a lot of, weren't there, undersized linemen, maybe a little bit slow linemen that came through Philip Fulmer's program that turned into NFL players, weren't there? Because he coached them so well. Yes, there's the Kosi Coleman. There was no coaching required for Kosi Coleman or Aaron Sears. But for a lot of guys, I'd say there was. There was some coaching required for maybe Chad Clifton.
Yeah, a lot of those guys were natural. I think that Scott Wells was probably a little bit more of a natural than you give him credit for because he was really thick. He wasn't tall, but he also, I remember he wrestled extensively, and it postponed his college decision. And for those that don't remember Wells, he started for a decade for the Packers. And I thought that his leverage from the get-go was special. I think him and Cooper are similar in that regard. I think they understand the game and they understand leverage. If I don't believe in multi-sporting out the wazoo like some people do, I do believe you should play more than one sport. If your son or daughter is of that age, I don't think you should specialize. But if you want your son to be a great football player, then the offseason, he doesn't need to worry about basketball, have him wrestle. Because you learn leverage, and it's a whole different game when you learn leverage. You don't have to be the biggest and strongest. I think that Cooper Mays is proof of that. Although he's very strong, he's not the biggest guy. This day in Tennessee sports history. Where are we going here, Caleb, as we dive back into the Volmanac? I haven't used that word in a long time. And go ahead, get us rolling here, as this day in Tennessee sports history is brought to you by our great friends at Peak IV Hydration, South Knoxville and Sevierville. Wide array of IV treatments. And you can also get the patch. That's right, get the patch. PeakIVHydration.com, PeakIVHydration.com. So you don't have to be at one of their 2 locations in Sevierville or South Knoxville. With over 100 5-star reviews, you know that the patch will take care of you. They're incredible. IV patches for energy and more. All right, PeakIVHydration.com. They bring you this day in Tennessee sports history. What is it, Caleb?
So on this day in Tennessee football history, Tennessee scored. We talked about winning ugly, so I feel like it's relevant for me to bring this up. Tennessee scored one of its ugliest wins ever, and it wasn't against a good team, but it was the year they won the national championship in 1998. I'm talking about 1998 when they beat Auburn 17-9, and one of the most hideous offensive performances. I'm sure you covered that game, Dave, that Tennessee's ever had. Jamal Lewis suffered a season-ending injury in that game, but Tennessee won because Sean Ellis returned a fumble for a touchdown. And
yeah, I feel like he's still running. Do you remember how long it took him?
Yes. And the defense in that game, without Wilson on the bench, he wasn't able to play, held Auburn on 4 tries from the 6-inch line to get into the end zone. Auburn got the ball off a turnover and was spotted the ball first and goal from the 6-inch line. 2 sneaks, 2 runs. They couldn't get into the end zone because of Tennessee's defensive line. That was, Dave, we talk about Florida that year. We talk about Arkansas. We talk about Syracuse, Florida State, national title game, Mississippi State. That might have been the ugliest win Tennessee had the whole year, though, that Auburn game.
No, I agree. An ugly win, I'm going to define as less than 2 scores. Is that fair? So it's a 1-score ball game?
Yeah, an ugly win can be a 1-score ball game. I've seen some ugly Super Bowl wins that were 2-score games, but yeah.
Okay. An ugly win, less than 2 scores against Arkansas. Poll question, would concern me, be just fine. One of those 2 options. Why Tennessee has a coach on their staff that could be at another school next year. And I'm wondering if Tennessee has a plan to replace him because he is one of the best they've got. Hang tight. 2 minutes with Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker, Off the Hook Sports.
19 years this year. I've been in the community since 1993. You're getting a lot of information. Unlike when you were working, they made the choice for you. Now you have to make the choice. Come to us and let us help you make it easy. Call Medicare Misty, MedicareMisty.com or 423-777-5577. Let us help them sleep at night.
And we call her Medicare Misty.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Neubert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that. If we wouldn't put our family in it, we're not going to put their family in it. If you're going to say that you're doing the best work in Knoxville, now saying it's one thing, producing it and providing it's another.
The largest family-owned collision center in Knoxville is Joe Neubert Collision Center.
Are you ready to get strong? At NFC, we offer top-notch weight training and functional fitness, so you can build strength and improve your performance. Join today at NFC1.com or stop by any one of our 7 East Tennessee locations.
Why Banks & Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks and Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks and Jones. T. Scott Jones. BanksandJones.com.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks and Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney. Play to win, BanksJones.com.
Who's this guy?
Hello, wizard.
The Dave Hooker Show,
Who?
a presentation of Off the Hook Sports,
What?
YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. Back to Dave Hooker.
Derek, you're right. Ellis doesn't get mentioned enough as one of the many great players at Tennessee. I think that's because they had about what on that defensive line? 8 really good to great players, B+ to A+ players.
Yeah, but Sean, he makes a good point.
And we talked about it yesterday. Sorry, with Billy Ratliff. I mean, you had guys. John Henderson and the '98 team wasn't academically eligible. There's a Prop 48 thing that I'm not going to go into explaining, but you could show up on campus. Your grades weren't good enough. You had to sit a year. But and then you had Albert Hainsworth sitting the bench in the '99 team. So they were that deep and that good. It was pretty crazy.
Yeah, but he makes a good point. You're right with Ellis. Ellis was the best player on that defensive line. I mean, look at the NFL track record. And again, I mean, yes, you may bring up a fair point with what I'm about to say in terms of just personal issues that happened, but Sean Ellis had a better NFL career than Leonard Little. As a matter of fact, Sean Ellis is on the level of John Henderson and Albert Hainsworth in terms of NFL careers.
Yeah, but Leonard Little you'd agree, is the better player. And if he doesn't have the terrible incident with the DUI that resulted in a fatality.
And he still had a Pro Bowl career too.
He did. He's not a Hall of Fame career though. I think you would agree with this, and tell me if not. Based off what they did in the NFL, Sean Ellis is a very, very good NFL player. Leonard Little, if not for the DUI and that sort of thing, and he just plays without any incident, could have been a Hall of Fame player. He still was very, very good. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, I think you're right. Could you imagine, because they kind of all cross paths, but if you could, from like 97 to 2001, if you could just get like, if you imagine if they could have gotten to a point where they all lined up together as like veterans, or just a couple of players who were 2 years younger or 2 years older, and you had John Henderson and Albert Hainsworth in the middle, and then Leonard Little and Sean Ellis on the end. I mean, that's like, because I'll say this, in 2001, they weren't as deep because it was just Henderson and Hainsworth, but Henderson and Hainsworth turned Will Overstreet into an NFL draft pick. All due respect to Will Overstreet, I'm not sure he's an NFL draft pick.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you too. I thought that, didn't he come right after Pollard too? So there was like this comparison to Pollard out of Georgia.
Pollard?
No. David Pollard.
David Pollock.
Pollock. So there was a comparison there, probably because they were white. But anyway, the UPS store, Hardin Valley, here to help individuals, small businesses by offering a wide range of products and services, locally owned and operated, conveniently located by a family of Vols at 10629 Hardin Valley Road. 10629 Hardin Valley Road. All right. So don't want to get too ahead of ourselves, but I do want to offer this up, because if things continue to play out, I think that Tim Banks, Tennessee's defensive coordinator, will have an opportunity to become a head coach following this season. I think he's done a masterful job. As a matter of fact, I think he did as good of a job as he could have in 23 and 22, when it seemed like they were giving up just a massive amount of yards, and it's easy to say, oh, that's just coaching. I think what we've learned is, no, it's the Jimmies and Joes more than the X's and O's. Now, I think Tim Banks is going to have an offer within the next year or two, and I actually think it's going to come this year. So how concerned should Tennessee be that Tim Banks could potentially go elsewhere? Because this defense, if you look at what he has built in 2 years, has gone from embarrassing at times to dominant and elite now. That's pretty impressive.
It's very impressive, and Tennessee should absolutely worry about losing Tim Banks. This is look. Let's get something out of the way real quick because this is something that we've kind of learned with defense, and this is why it's hard to build a team defensively, and why more people want to build teams offensively. You can overcome being less talented on offense with a good scheme. You can't do that on defense, right, Dave? You can't
Correct.
get away with not being as talented, and it's finally showing Tim Banks has the players. I think Tim Banks is going to get a lot of interviews because the narrative on Tim Banks is one, most people believe that he's coaching with one hand tied behind his back as is because of how Josh Heupel, the tempo that Josh Heupel stresses, the number of possessions he wants to run. So most people are going to look at, many athletic directors are going to look at Tim Banks' numbers and be even more impressed than we are because they're going to be like, how did you do that with this offensive based system? How did you pull off these defensive stats? So I think that if Tennessee keeps this up, and y'all know what I predicted at the beginning of the year, I mean, Tim Banks is gone after this year. He's going to get a head coaching job somewhere.
Okay. So if you're Tennessee, do you look elsewhere? Or let me ask you this. We've seen this with Chip Kelly, and he's comfortable being a coordinator. Now, they're nowhere close in age, but he's comfortable being a coordinator and leaving a mess at UCLA. And he's now a offensive coordinator at Ohio State. Can you pay him enough to stay, or does it depend on the job? And then we'll talk about if they do, who I think the natural replacement would be.
I think it depends on the job. I think that particularly with coaches, and I will say this, and there's actually been a movement, and I know this with a lot of leaders in the community, particularly with African-American coaches. There has been a push for them to not take certain jobs in college football, because Dave, as you know, oftentimes historically, I don't know if this is much the case now, but there was a historical issue where when African-Americans did get head coaching opportunities, they were the worst possible jobs you could take. Right.
Right. No, you're absolutely right. And they would take them out of desperation. I still go back to the Charlie Strong thing. He should have gotten an earlier shot. Now, he turned out not to be the best head coach in the world, but he should have gotten an earlier shot. And I was told way back when at the time, but it shouldn't have been the time to stereotype and be racist. But I was told that the big sticking point with him was that he had a Caucasian wife, and that was the big sticking point. I mean, I would hope that nobody would think that sort of thing anymore. I would hope that Florida would look at a Tim Banks and say, wow, he can keep us in games with the defense. And as long as he goes out and hires an offensive guru guy, then you're okay with that. Because look at what he did with when he had players. Look at this secondary. The defensive front is fantastic, but the secondary has done a great job. Jermod McCoy, yes, was a fantastic pickup, and he was going to be good no matter where he went. But look at what he's turned Will Brooks into. I mean, we kind of giggled and snickered that Will Brooks, a walk-on, would actually be a starter, but he's a good one now. And Ricky Gibson is a great example of a guy that has developed under him. So I don't think that, well, first, obviously, no school should be afraid to hire him because he's black. I mean, obviously, but I don't think you should be afraid in this day and age just because it's an offensive sport right now to hire a defensive sport. Because I've mentioned this before. I think football is kind of evolving a little bit, and you're going to see more teams do what Michigan did last year. So Tim Banks can make you that type of team. It might not be as easy to sell. Danny White might not like it because you're not scoring 50 points every Saturday. But I think Tim Banks would be a great head coach.
Oh, I agree. And so where I was going with this is, again, I'm with you. I don't think it's as much of a problem now as it was, but I think there's a movement there's a concerted effort among black coaches themselves to not take certain jobs, because you realize now if you take those jobs, it derails you. I mean, and Derek brought up a great point. Sylvester Croom took the Mississippi State job.
Great point.
You never should have taken that job. Terrible job when he took that job in 2004. And yeah, and so I think Tim Banks, and this is where I think Tennessee may be able to keep Tim Banks, is I think Tim Banks is going to be very particular about what job he takes. And at that point, the money could lure Tim Banks to stay. Now, you're right. If Florida comes calling, I think he's taking the Florida job. If there's a lot of other jobs where if USC comes calling, he's taking the USC job. Heck, if Oklahoma comes calling, he may take the Oklahoma job. But what if it's a smaller program? What if Florida? I mean, what if you can think of a school. I can't think of one off the top of my head, but there's plenty of schools. What if they come calling? He may not be. It may come down to what would Tennessee offer, and at that point, Dave. I mean, we'll get to who they should replace him with in a second, but I'd open the checkbook up to keep Tim Banks. Honestly,
I would too. I would make him. I'd make him a $2.5 million coordinator.
I would too. Absolutely.
I mean, I would have no issue with that whatsoever. Now, if I would have asked you this last year, and it's our poll question, don't look at it, but it's our poll question that we want you to vote on. If I were to ask you this, let's say middle of the year last year, when suddenly Tennessee's offense seems like they're only throwing wide receiver screens, and everybody says that it's Alex Golesh, and that's why he's gone now to South Florida, and that's why they're having an issue. What would be the bigger loss, Tim Banks or Alex Golesh that has left? I don't even think it's close, because I think this is Josh Heupel's offense.
Yeah, I think Tim Banks would absolutely be the bigger loss. Now, I say that with this. I said Joey Halzle's gets a pass for 2023. I don't think what happened in 2023 is his fault. But there have been some red flags in the sense of you can tell that Alex Golesh and Josh Heupel worked together a lot. The same with Jeff Lebby and Josh Heupel before that when he was at UCF.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not so sure Joey Halzle and Josh Heupel work together, Dave. I think Josh Heupel just devises the game plan on his own. It's almost like Halzle is just a coordinator in name only. So is it hurting Tennessee's offense that Josh Heupel doesn't have another voice in the room helping him maybe think of something he hasn't thought of? Because Golesh did that. You're seeing that at USF. By the way, that's why Tim Banks wouldn't get the Florida job, because if you're Florida, I would hire Alex Golesh before Tim Banks, just because Alex Golesh is that good of a coordinator. And he's in Florida right now.
Right.
But
whole question, where do we stand on that? Do people agree with us? Because the middle of last year, let's be honest, guys, everybody in the chat, you would have said Golesh was a monster loss, and that's the problem with the offense. It wasn't. I've told you what the problem with the offense was, is accuracy at the quarterback position, but I don't want to go down that road. And that's why they had to throw all those long screens. That was not like Josh Heupel just came in and said, hey, everybody, I'm going to do something completely different. That's not what happened, Caleb.
No, not at all. I think it was just Alex Golesh added a couple of elements in that made the offense more complete. And now, and the majority are saying right now, yes, Banks is better between Banks and Golesh, like 71% to 29%.
Yeah, would that number have been flip-flop in November of last year?
Probably, but they would have been wrong even last year, because I wasn't holding anything against Halzle last year. I don't know if Banks is a better defense coordinator than Golesh is an offensive coordinator. I think Golesh might be better, but I think just relative to, put it this way, who you can get, I think may be more difficult. Tim Banks, I will say this. I talk about not taking bad jobs. I was shocked he left Penn State for Tennessee, knowing what Josh Heupel was going to do at Tennessee, because he could have hurt his profile. I don't know why. Maybe it was the idea that Josh Heupel told him he could get Rodney Garner, and that's why he's like, okay, I could help myself that way. Because Dave, if you're a defensive coordinator, if you're an aspiring defensive coordinator, would you ever take the Tennessee job?
Well, I wouldn't have then. You make a good point, but now I've seen it evolve. And let's face it, too. Tim Banks, I mean, Tennessee could go 10-2 this year, 10-2 next year in two very different ways. Their offense could put their defense in a tough spot like they've done before, and then suddenly the defense ranks towards the bottom in the nation as they've done before. It wasn't that long ago, just 2 years, guys, that Tennessee's defense was in the hundreds of overall defenses. So, yeah, I think that Banks would be the heart and soul of your offense. Now, would Tennessee, if they needed to, would they stay in-house? Because they love to do that. Well, I'll tell you this. I thought when he was hired that William Inge, not to say he would be as good, but he's named the co-defensive coordinator now, linebackers coach. He has been a coordinator on his own at previous places, and he's been a coordinator on his own, not a co-coordinator at places that like to throw the football around. We talk about good moves, like if Tennessee's going to run that screen pass over and over, or if Tennessee's going to do this, that. But you talk about a smart move and being ahead of the curve. Josh Heupel hiring Inge is an incredibly smart move. Any debate there?
No, I actually agree with you. I think Josh Heupel hiring Inge was a great move. Particularly, we're seeing the upgrade at linebacker Tennessee has right now, although I think that's more player-based than it is coordinator coaching based, but that's just me. But you're right. William Inge has failed in the past as a defense coordinator. Let's just call it what it is. He got fired at 2 other defensive coordinator not fired, but at the very least demoted. So he was at Buffalo in 2011, 28-10 in 2011, and he got fired. Now the coach ended up getting fired himself by Danny White later. And then he was at Indiana from 2013 to 2015. And when Tom Allen got there, he got demoted to special teams and linebackers coach. Then he went to Fresno State and became the defensive coordinator with Kalen DeBoer. And weirdly, he left Fresno State for Washington and accepted a demotion at Washington. So it's weird that in 3 times he's been a defensive coordinator, Dave, he's either gotten fired or demoted. Although the last one, I don't know if he maybe just accepted the demotion because Kalen DeBoer was able to get a more big name hire by going to Washington as opposed to Fresno State.
I don't think you ever just accept a demotion.
Well, would you rather be a linebacker? But would you rather be a defensive coordinator at Fresno State or a linebackers coach at a Power 5 school? Would you rather be a coordinator at a Group of 5 school or a position coach at a Power 5 school?
Well, recruiting's brutal, so I would say a coordinator.
Okay.
I mean, I think that the position. Oh, I know the position coaches have to recruit like a bear, and a coordinator's usually not quite as much. If you want much more recruiting information, you can join Hooker's Corner. Much more interaction with me and Caleb Calhoun. Hooker's Corner, the QR code's right there. It's just $9.98 a month. We greatly appreciate it, and we'll continue to bring you more recruiting information and give away great prizes thanks to Sports Treasures. Our Pick 6 glossy photos autographed by the Vols will give away on Friday, and then we'll give away a Dylan Sampson autographed helmet, and he should be in the Heisman conversation, but he's not. So join Hooker's Corner right there. You can also be a free member. Now, we want to thank Sports Treasures, over 5 million Sports Treasures in North Knoxville, for providing the monthly prizes, the grand prizes we're able to give away. But also, we want to be sure and thank Rick Terry. Rick Terry's jewelry design. Rick Terry is phenomenal. So go ahead and join Hooker's Corner, and we can put that link in the background. But Caleb, I also want people to know they can be just a free member of Hooker's Corner, and you can be eligible for Rick Terry's Great 8 Garmin Challenge. And that means that when we hit 8,000 subscribers, as long as you're a free member of Hooker's Corner and you're also subscribed to the channel, you can win a Garmin watch worth over $1,000. So there's the QR code again, chance to win, even a free member, but we'd love for you to be a paid member, of course, so we can keep providing more and more recruiting information, more interaction with me and Caleb Calhoun. Stay tuned, because we've got, is it 5 Hogs to watch, or do you want to call them Razorbacks?
I don't know. 5. I like 5 Hogs. Sounds kind of cool, doesn't it?
Yeah, 5 Hogs. Your Hogs up next with Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. 2 minutes off Hook Sports.
Commercial Bank is your neighborhood bank. What makes us different from other banks? We understand that every customer has unique opportunities, challenges, and financial concerns. We don't expect you to fit into the same box as the next person or business. Whether it's purchasing a home, saving for your child's future, or planning for your next vacation, we're with you every step of the way to navigate life's big decisions. Commercial Bank. Life made better.
Welcome back to the program. As I obviously clicked on the wrong button, so we're going to take a quick break. Give me 2 minutes off Hook Sports.
5th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Neubert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that. If we wouldn't put our family in it, we're not going to put their family in it. If you're going to say that you're doing the best work in Knoxville, now saying it's one thing, producing it and providing it's another.
The largest family-owned collision center in Knoxville is Joe Neubert Collision Center.
Hi, I'm Rick Terry, and we at Rick Terry Jewelry Designs pride ourselves in the highest quality craftsmanship from a family-owned business here in Knoxville for over 35 years. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we also take pride in being an affordable option for all your game day accessories, especially those fire opals. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we want to be your jeweler every day and especially on game day. Go Vols!
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Dare to compare.
With our brand new location on Emory Road, Eye Care Optical is bringing East Tennessee's best eye care to your neighborhood. Doctors Johnston and Combs offer unmatched expertise and care without a trip to Knoxville. Eye Care Optical, now in Powell.
When the lights turn on and the game begins, you need a team you can rely on. Ray Varner Ford and Clinton's strong lineup of vehicles is crafted with the same dedication and hard work that drives our community. Experience quality and value in this pre-owned 2018 Ford Mustang convertible, 24,550, 2023 Ford Bronco Sport Big Bend, 29,789, 2022 Ford Escape SEL all-wheel drive, 26,975. Local you trust, pre-owned vehicles you can afford. Ray Varner Ford, built for the game.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
He tries very hard. The Dave Hooker Show.
All I know is when we win a game, it's a team win. When we lose a game, it's a team loss.
A presentation of Off the Hook Sports.
Touchdown! Unbelievable!
YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. Back to Dave Hooker.
I want to remind you that you can join Hooker's Corner, and you will be eligible to win that Pick six glossy photos autographed by Tennessee's defensive backs. But what is really more important than that is what I'm about to go ahead and put on our screen. So we would love for you to join Hooker's Corner, but this is far more important. The Hurricane Helene fund that we've vetted and found out. We found one that we feel comfortable with. We don't get a drop of the cash that would go to those that have been affected by the terrible, terrible hurricane in the Western Carolinas and East Tennessee. So if you would like to give, do that, and you can do it right there and know that your money is going directly to them, not some national charity with like 90% overhead. And Caleb's covered a lot of charities, I'm sure, and political races and that sort of thing. And I'm not going to name anybody, but one has a 93% overhead. So that's, again, there's the link. It's going to go to the people that need the help, not the CEO that has to make $5 million a year. So, Caleb, your Hogs to watch. First of all, I think I know who's going to be number one, and I'm going to say bank on it. Arkansas's quarterback, Taylor Green, will be number one, but we shall see. Bank on it, brought to you by Commercial Bank. Commercial Bank, member FDIC, life made better. Commercial Bank creates positive experiences for every customer every day with better solutions, better technology. Commercial Banks for personal and business. Commercial Bank, life made better. Caleb, let's count them down. Hogs to watch, number 5 would be?
Number 5 on Hogs to watch would be another former Vol who we haven't talked about today, which would be Danico Slaughter. We talked about him earlier in the week. Danico Slaughter is the starter at nickel for Arkansas. He started a good bit for Tennessee, and he could give Tennessee trouble. Tennessee wants to work the middle of the field, and he already has an interception, 2 tackles for a loss, a sack, 3 pass breakups. He's actually been very good for Arkansas this year.
Well, not the whole year. Really struggled early. Past couple of weeks has come into his own in the nickel position. So I think that's a little bit scary for Tennessee. However, I don't know if you were going to mention this other player that I do want to address real quick. The safety. Oh, help me with his name. We've got the story up on the website, but the safety that is expected back is on the out list, which is not a good sign. Can you help me with his name? Really
The
quick?
injury report. Let's see. I believe Jaylen Braxton. Is that who we're talking about?
Yes.
Yes.
So he was supposed to be back early in the week, and now he's not. So I think that's a significant thing for Arkansas to have to overcome. When you think a guy's going to be ready early in the week and he's not, that's not great. All right. So who's next on your Hogs to watch?
All right, number 4 on this list, and he's only on this list because of his production as the only really offensive weapon for the team this year, but I actually think Tennessee's matchups should allow them to shut him down, and I'm talking about, obviously, Jaquindon Jackson, who has 79 carries for 509 yards and 9 touchdowns, also has 8 catches for 85 yards, but based on the Vols' defensive front, they should shut him down. I'm just saying, because he's the really only offensive weapon they've had, you got to put him on the list.
Agreed. Who's next?
All right, number 3, we're looking at TJ Metcalf. Now, back to the secondary. Guys, Tennessee is going to be forced to throw the ball a lot more this game than they have in the past. They're going to get tested, and TJ Metcalf is going to, not DJ Metcalf, not DK Metcalf, TJ Metcalf.
Any relation?
No, DK Metcalf, I think, is with a K, isn't it?
I just thought I would ask.
Yeah, I'm actually not sure though, but I can look that up. But he already has 3 interceptions on the year. He had 2 against Auburn. He has a forced fumble, 3 pass breakups. Guy's been all over the field this year at free safety. He's a ball hawking guy. Tennessee's going to have to air it out. They got to be careful with him.
Yep. Who's next?
Number 2 is Landon Jackson. Now, this is a defensive end for Arkansas. Obviously, Dane Davis gave up 2 strip sacks in the last game, and that's a big concern for Tennessee. And Landon Jackson, although John Campbell Jr. and Lance Hurd are back, again, you can take that with a grain of salt. And Jackson has 2 sacks, 4 tackles for a loss, 2 pass breakups, 19 tackles, 13 of which were solo. He's an elite defensive end. Tennessee has to be real careful with him. They got to account for him at all times.
Bank on it. Taylon Green is the top player, the top hog in the slop to watch, brought to you by Commercial Bank.
Commercial Bank is your neighborhood bank. What makes us different from other banks? We understand that every customer has unique opportunities, challenges, and financial concerns. We don't expect you to fit into the same box as the next person or business. Whether it's purchasing a home, saving for your child's future, or planning for your next vacation, we're with you every step of the way to navigate life's big decisions. Commercial Bank. Life made better.
All right, who is it? Is it Taylon?
It is Taylon. You are right, Dave. You nailed it. You nailed your bet. Look at you. Look at Dave.
Coming out of the chute. Give it to me, Paris Hilton.
That's hot.
I'm not the first person to say that. All right. Why Taylon Green? I'll give you one. He's 7th in the SEC in rushing, and the other 6, the 6 ahead of him are running backs. He is, last I checked, a quarterback. So there's significant concern. Now, from the scouting I've done, he rolls to the right a lot. Okay. And I don't know if he's just more comfortable in that. Some guys are, but I think he's predictable at this point of the season. So while he definitely should be number 1 on your list because a running quarterback can be the great equalizer and flip-flop a game, I don't know that I'm really afraid of him if I'm Tennessee.
Well, and also
isn't Michael Vick, I guess is what I'm saying.
Right. And Michael Vick was from a different time. Nowadays, Dave, let's call it what it is in college football. No, and I'm serious on this.
I know, but you realize how old that makes me feel? Go ahead.
Well, no, but here's why it matters. Back in the day, in the 90s, you could forgive and accept, like, if a running quarterback, okay, they may have very mediocre passing stats, but they're such a threat on the ground, you look past it, right?
Yes.
And nowadays with college football, the way it's changed over the past 10 years, if you're not an accurate passer or not a great decision maker, if you're a mobile quarterback, it should inflate your passing stats. That's what it's been doing for the past 10 to 15 years. So if you still have mediocre passing stats now in this day, it's a problem, because what happens is you're able to extend plays, keep things alive. People have to account for you running. So there's usually, and you know this, Dave, if you're a mobile quarterback, how often is there a really easy read to make down the field?
True. Let me ask you this. Is this a good primer for Jaylen Milroe? Brought to you by Quality Tire Pros. The Eberle family has been serving Chattanooga's community since 1957. All major brands of tires, full service, automotive, brakes, alignments, oil changes, and more. All work covered by nationwide warranty. Cherokee Boulevard or online at qualitytirepros.com, qualitytirepros.com. Tell Bo that Off the Hook Sports and Dave Hooker said hello. Is this a good primer for Jaylen Milroe?
No, and I'll tell you exactly why it's not a good primer. For what I just said. This day and age, mobile quarterbacks, their ability to extend plays and defenses accounting for them, that makes for one very easy read for the quarterback to throw, even if they're not accurate or not good decision makers. And Jaylen Milroe, how often does he have a really easy read because of that, Dave? At least 3 times a game. And I think that Taylon Green isn't hitting those easy reads, guys. He's 88 of 162. That's 54% of his passes for 1,236 yards. That's only 7.5 yards attempt with 5 touchdowns and 5 interceptions. And now, yes, the 72 carries for 331 yards and 4 touchdowns does speak to his mobility, but the difference is he's not finding the easy reads with his mobility. Jaylen Milroe is, so it's not the same primer. And you're right, Taylon Green runs one way. Bobby Petrino is not. I don't think he's really crafted the best offense for him the way Kalen DeBoer did for Jaylen Milroe. And Will West is right, and I didn't think about this, but I said yesterday that that James Pierce should explode in this game, because twice now Taylon Green has been sacked twice by defensive ends against Oklahoma State and Texas A&M, because they leave that left side wide open because he runs to his right. And by the way, I think James Pierce is going to be able to run him down. I think he's faster.
Well, I don't think there's any doubt about that. James Pierce was only one of 15 guys that ran, 22 miles an hour? Maybe on the chat board, you can help me out with that stat. Only one of 15 guys in all of college football that ran the certain number. I think it was like 22, or was it 23 miles an hour? I mean, it was on the turnover.
Oh yeah, it was an insane stat.
Yeah. Okay. We'll look that up. And then coming up, I'm going to go ahead and tell you that Caleb Calhoun was dead wrong. And I think that he's going to be willing to admit it coming up. I can't tell you that I'm 100% certain there, but I believe that'll be the case. So hang tight. 2 minutes why the college football playoff has actually made the regular season better, despite what Caleb Calhoun tried to tell you.
5th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Neubert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that. If we wouldn't put our family in it, we're not going to put their family in it. If you're going to say that you're doing the best work in Knoxville, now saying it's one thing, producing it and providing it's another.
The largest family-owned collision center in Knoxville is Joe Neubert Collision Center.
Hi, I'm Rick Terry, and we at Rick Terry Jewelry Designs pride ourselves in the highest quality craftsmanship from a family-owned business here in Knoxville for over 35 years. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we also take pride in being an affordable option for all your game day accessories, especially those fire opals. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we want to be your jeweler every day, and especially on game day. Go Vols!
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Dare to compare. With our brand new location on Emory Road, Eye Care Optical is bringing East Tennessee's best eye care to your neighborhood. Doctors Johnston and Combs offer unmatched expertise and care without a trip to Knoxville. Eye Care Optical, now in Powell.
When the lights turn on and the game begins, you need a team you can rely on. Ray Varner Ford in Clinton's strong lineup of vehicles is crafted with the same dedication and hard work that drives our community. Experience quality and value in this pre-owned 2018 Ford Mustang convertible, 24,550, 2023 Ford Bronco Sport Big Bend, 29,789, 2022 Ford Escape SEL all-wheel drive, 26,975. Local you trust, pre-owned vehicles you can afford. Ray Varner Ford, built for the game.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney. Play to win, banksjones.com.
You're listening to The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of OffTheHookSports.com.
The internet is full of pictures of each and every one of you.
Available on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the Off the Hook Sports app. Download now for free.
Is there nothing you people can't do?
Also available on OffTheHookSports.com.
All right, comments from our message board. We certainly appreciate that. Are brought to you by Asia Cafe. Treat yourself to authentic Asian cuisine, handcrafted from guarded family recipes. That's a Hooker hangout. Love that. 5 locations to choose from. AsiaCafe.org, AsiaCafe.org. And as you can see above my shoulder, they have the 6-to-1 Brazilian Cocoa Energy Booster Premix Instant White Coffee that is phenomenal. Lim Dynasty has been working on that since 1909. Now they're in Knoxville, and the coffee is just phenomenal. I'm just going to go ahead and tell you, it'll last all day. It's way different than what you would think the usual bit of coffee that you might partake in. So check out Asia Cafe in Knoxville. 5 locations to choose from. AsiaCafe.org, or just order the coffee online. And so I'm a little bit perplexed. I've said this before. Take a second and hit like and subscribe and turn the notifications on. Hit that bell, because we are going to visit with Cooper later today. I thought it was going to be yesterday. So Keith, I appreciate the comment. Okay, but I think we're in 2 different worlds, and maybe I'm in the wrong world. I'm ready to be open here. But Keith says, hope the Tim Banks soft zone does not cost us this year like this week. Okay, hang tight. If you can apply pressure with 4, are you going to play man? Are you going to blitz? No. You're going to play zone. And Tennessee's defensive front, that's what I'm so impressed of by Tim Banks, is their defensive front doesn't do that stuff, and he doesn't feel, sometimes when you do a really good job at something, you've worked extra hard, and then this show's a prime example. This whole show was incredibly difficult to get started, and it's from a technical aspect. I didn't know any of that stuff, and some would say I still don't, but now it's a little bit easier. Caleb and I are in a flow. So, but Tim Banks now, he could have done the same hard things to try to manufacture pressure, but I think he's been very bright as a coach and not done that. He realizes that he can just get the pressure from the front 4. He might blitz Peely and Carter every once in a while, but that's the exception, more of the rule.
Yeah, he hasn't blitzed much. What he does more is he does a lot of different stunts and things like that, but he doesn't necessarily do all-out blitzes. You want to know when he blitzes the most, guys? Is when he has a big lead and it's an obvious passing downs, because he can play soft zone and make you work the field. And Tim Banks is one of the first to be ahead of the curve on that. I remember a lot of criticism he got. It was about 2 years ago when Florida almost came back with Anthony Richardson throwing all over them. And the funny thing was, people were blaming Tim Banks' defense. The truth was, they were bringing it all down to an onside kick. And it's not Tim Banks' fault that Florida recovered an onside kick. But when Florida had a chance for a Hail Mary at the end, what did Tim Banks do? He called an all-out blitz, which no one does anymore. Or no one's ever done. That was so ahead of the time to do that.
I agree. And I'm going to say this. Some people kind of got on to us about Arkansas as the next test and blah, blah, blah. And like we're downplaying what Tennessee has done to this point. I want to be real clear. Caleb doesn't have his pick out yet, but I have to do the television thing on Wednesday that runs on Saturday. So I put my pick because I want it to be consistent. I'm at 42-13. So I don't think this game's going to be close. But if there's an issue at tackle, offensive tackle, then I wouldn't be surprised to see another 25-15 slugfest. And I think that Josh Heupel will definitely change gears just like he did against Oklahoma if he needs to. But right now, assuming, big assumption, and Philip Fulmer used to always say, you know what assume does, right? Caleb, do you know what assume
I know what it does. I'm very aware.
Makes an A out of you and me. If they're healthy, I think Tennessee scores 40 and wins easily.
I think so too. I think they'll be fine.
You're giving away your prediction. What are you doing?
I'm not giving it away yet. I'm saving it. I am saving it. So I'll save that for tomorrow.
All right. It's time for Last Look, brought to you by Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn. We saved the best for last, but I just want to go ahead and tell you right now that Caleb Calhoun is absolutely wrong. Caleb, you said that the regular season would not be as good because of the college football playoff. Are you willing to back off that?
No. And let's set this up real quick. So for those who don't know, Alabama and Georgia had the highest rated CFP game. I'm not college football regular season game since Alabama, Florida State in 2017. So 7 years. Impressive. Okay. I think it's the novelty of the college football playoff and the expanded playoff that's going to make the regular season very exciting. So you guys have all missed what I said from this. And I've told you guys, college football, I quoted Shannon Terry on this, is in the second inning of a rocket ship launching to the moon. He said that back in the spring. So I would say we're in about the fifth inning now. Okay. So we're in the fifth inning. The rocket ship's halfway up. Hasn't hit the moon yet, but it will hit the moon, and it will be at the moon for about 2-3 years, where you will have an amazing playoff, and so many people will be watching the regular seasons, and it'll be super exciting. Then in about year 3 or year 4, when the lesser teams realize that there's no point for them to go to the playoff because they're going to get blown out, when the top teams realize they're going to the playoff no matter what, you will see interest dwindle in the regular season. And I actually have a great precedent for this, one that I've used a lot. In 2004, because they thought they could compete with the NFL in the fall, which was stupid, NASCAR decided to start the Chase Cup, the playoff. And interest in NASCAR peaked in 2004, 2005, and 2006, right when they started the Chase Cup. It was through the roof. It had never been as entertaining before as ever. Everybody was going to races. They were loading up TV networks. They made movies based on this. It was doing amazing. But slowly but surely, the races before the Chase Cup got further and further devalued, and people more and more started to realize that the Daytona 500 doesn't matter anymore. And 10 years later, NASCAR is darn near dead because people don't care about the regular races in the summer.
Okay, you don't think that's going to happen in college football playoff, though? The college football, though. I mean,
it won't happen for me because I love college football. I fear that it'll happen to the regular season in college football. I absolutely fear college football regular season is going to go the way of NASCAR.
Okay, so I covered a lot of NASCAR. I've covered races at Bristol, Talladega, Atlanta. I feel like I'm forgetting one, but there are all kinds of things that you're leaving out, Caleb. I mean, there are all kinds. I mean, that was previously Dale Earnhardt Sr. was still with us. He was a big draw. Then the battle back and forth between Jeff Gordon, the going to the, what was it called, guys? You can help me on the message board. Car of Tomorrow, or whatever the heck they did, where all the cars had to be the same. They took the personalities out of it. They didn't like drivers fighting. No, I think you're oversimplifying things to the nth degree. I mean, an incredible degree there.
I don't think I am. I think I've nailed it. Because first of all,
let me ask you this. Major League Baseball has a silly playoff, does it not?
It is the stupidest playoff.
Okay, but it's gotten people talking. That little 3-game thing, that the next gen car. Thank you, James. They've gotten people talking. People care about who wins a 3-game series now. I think it's silly. I think what the NBA does with the play-in game is silly too, but it helped them as well. So if you want to cite NASCAR, even though I don't think it's a good example, I think there are a lot of things wrong with NASCAR. I will give you some of that. They wanted to take some of the dollars away from football, which is why they created in television ratings, they created the chase for the championship, because basically NASCAR would fall off the map when football started because it's the same audience. But you're right. That lessened the importance of the races before. And I think if they could go back, they would undo that. But that's like, I mean, that's like saying that, there are a ton of problems there. I'm trying to think of a good analogy, but, that's just, I don't think that's a good one. I think there are a lot of issues.
Okay. So you brought up baseball and basketball. Now, you have me with the MLB regular season attendance being the highest in 7 years this year. I don't think that's because of the new playoff gimmick, though. I actually think it's because they actually sped up the game because of the new rules. I think that baseball and NBA are great examples. When's the last time you sat and watched a full regular season baseball or NBA game?
Some this year. I've enjoyed baseball and the fact that guys are moving and there's more action because of the pitch clock. No, I have. I've definitely watched. I've sat and watched a full game. And
do you acknowledge that it carries very little weight, though, unlike what it used to?
Well, I think never carried a lot of weight because it was 162 games. No one game carried a lot of weight.
Oh, I think it did. Look, I think baseball made a cardinal sin dating back to the 90s when they created the wild card. I think the creation of the wild card in baseball devalued the regular season ever since then. They should have stuck with 2 teams in each league, play a semifinals to get to the World Series, period, end of story. That's how it should have been done. Baseball went 100 years. I mean, not 100. They went 100 years with no wild card, and they became America's national pastime. Then they created the wild card. Now they're just the past. And I mean, again, it is. And some people on the message board with NASCAR are bringing up the political stuff and the Bubba Wallace stuff and things like that. I'm not going to comment on that, but what I will say is that NASCAR had already tanked in popularity before that, guys. And
and James nailed it too. James apparently is a NASCAR fan, and I used to cover it, but that's been many years ago. He says NASCAR teams can only make minimum changes. There's one manufacturer that builds the chassis and 3 engine builders. That is exactly right. Now, I guess I'll back your point a little bit. Why did they do the college football playoff?
They were tired of giving away ratings in December to the NFL.
Well, no, but ultimately, why did they do it?
Money.
Okay. It's the same thing with NASCAR. NASCAR did that because they now make the cars through their own contracts as opposed to you go out and do it yourself. So they did that under the guise of, hey, we're going to make it all equal. So it's all about the driver. BS. They wanted to bring the car building in-house and make money off that, which is what they've done. So to strengthen your point, greed was the seed for that, and greed is the seed for college football and the college football playoff.
Yes, and it will benefit in the short term because of the novelty, but it will collapse. I do think in 10 years, I don't think college football will be bringing new fans into the fold. And okay, take Tennessee out of it because we cover Tennessee. So we remember the special moment of the 22 Tennessee-Alabama game because we cover it, Dave. But I'm going to ask you this honestly, not including Tennessee. What's the last special regular season college football game you watched that you're like, that will just stick with me forever because that moment was just so special?
I mean, last week, right? Georgia, Alabama.
That moment's not going to stick with you forever. You're going to forget that when the playoff happens. What is one that you can't go this year? What is one that is etched in your memory? Because here's my point. The 2013 Iron Bowl, the Alabama-Auburn kick 6 that Chris Davis ran back, Dave, that's etched in my memory forever. It's one of the greatest moments in the history of any sport. You're never going to get that again in college football. And so that's my problem. That happened all the time before that. 2012, Johnny Football going to Tuscaloosa and beating Alabama. It's etched in my memory. No one's going to remember. All of that's pre-playoff. Notice that?
Yeah, but again, I don't think. Listen, I'll give you some on baseball and the NBA, but I just think NASCAR is is a bad example. I think they mucked that thing up so bad that, the other thing that NASCAR did is they undervalued the fact that they had a product that was an offshoot to the men 25-54. They undervalued their appeal there. I thought they undervalued themselves, and they undervalued the television contract. They thought that no matter where they went, kind of like the NHL does this every once in a while, no matter what television contract they go to, that everything's going to be good. But we know networks don't work like that, Caleb.
No, they don't. And you're right. There are a lot of other things that go on with NASCAR that I can't speak to. I can speak to that from just a broad sense, but I can look at that happening, and I can look at sports that value their regular season. What's the last Duke UNC basketball game regular season etched in your memory?
Well, I would say almost every one. I mean, but that, again, I don't think that's a good example because that typically lives.
You're making my point. Like, none of these games, college football, this was what set college football apart from every other sport. Was every Saturday, was the magnitude was through the roof. And people say in the moment, the Alabama-Georgia magnitude was through the roof. That's a sugar high. So the point of this, the reason we're having this conversation, guys, if you just joined like midway through, is because Alabama-Georgia was the highest rated regular season game since 2017, which suggests that the expanded playoff increases the interest in the regular season. I'm saying that's a sugar high. I'm saying that's a sugar high, and it's not going to last.
Okay. I'll respectfully disagree. Portions of the program brought to you by our good friends at City Heat and Air, cityheatandair.com. Integrity matters. 50 years in East Tennessee. Don't trust a fly-by-night HVAC company to tell you you need a new unit that could cost you thousands or more. It's time for the last look, brought to you by Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn. And we'll take a look at the Heisman. And what I think has to happen for Nico Iamaleava to win the Heisman, I just don't know that it's possible anymore. We saved the best for last. Last look brought to you by Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn. Look at me. No contacts, no glasses. Had LASIK, Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn.
To visit ccteyes.com. The information you need is easy to access, and setting an appointment is as simple as clicking the tab. Doctors Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn, and Eye Care Optical at ccteyes.com. Simply the best.
Okay. I believe my Heisman ballot will be this at the end of the year. Now, I'm not saying that it would be this right now because Nico wouldn't be on it. And you only get 3 votes. So, but I've expanded it to 5 to be more interesting. So first of all, can we go ahead and get Dillon Gabriel out of the way? Because I never thought he was going to win it. I kind of thought he was a placeholder for the award as the favorite in the beginning of the year. Caleb, I never thought Dillon Gabriel could win it. And I've said that before, and I think you would back me on that.
You have. Okay, so we'll get him out of the way. But I mean, he has started to come into his own. Is that fair to say after we criticized him early?
Yeah. I just think he'll be 3rd or 4th or 5th or 6th on the ballot. I just don't think he has any chance of being number 1. Never did. All right. The 4 that I think will be in my head when I fill out my ballot at the beginning of December will be 4 downs. Brought to you by Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn.
4 downs. 4 questions. 4 answers. The Dave Hooker Show.
4
downs. A presentation of offthehooksports.com.
All right. Will Nico be on there? Are you excited? Are you still thinking Heisman opportunities? Go ahead and Caleb, if you can, give us the results of the poll question while Cooper Mays reminds us too. Oh, he doesn't remind us to do that.
That's
Caleb,
new tonight, by the way.
What's that?
Law and Order SVU is new tonight, for those who don't know.
Cooper Mays here. Hit like and subscribe.
Great. Update our poll question.
Okay, so according to our poll question, the question is, because of the college football playoff, I watch more football now, watch less, same.
Okay. Now, we got that out of the way. Let's get back to the Heisman. All right.
Coop here. First down.
That's a cheating question.
Yes. Nico Iamaleava at 4 is where I believe he will be at the end of the year. Not as much due to his play, but because of what Tennessee has they can win on defense, that's not going to help his cause.
No. You know where I'm going with this. I'm still Nico at the top. I just don't think he's had the chance yet. I think coming off the bye, they are going to unleash Nico Iamaleava starting this week, and I think it starts this week. I thought it started at Oklahoma. I was wrong. And I'm just going to give you a quick stat of somebody that is very well known, a guy by the name of Johnny Manziel. Nico has a higher completion percentage and more yards per attempt through his first 4 games than Johnny Manziel did his first 4 games in 2012 when he won the
NASCAR
Heisman.
and Johnny Manziel. Who would have thought we would have gotten there?
Super Mays here. Second down.
Jackson Dart, Ole Miss. If you watch that Ole Miss game, that kid has heart, kept playing hard despite the fact that they had some odd game plan to try to out-physical Kentucky. They got beat around the whole time. He got beat around, but he continued to play hard. I still believe he has one of the best 2 arms in college football, along with Nico. Both accuracy, and I'm not even going to discuss arm strength unless it's a problem, okay, Carson Beck, because we got all caught up into arm strength last year. Oh, my gosh, you could throw an orange 5,000 yards. But the bottom line is everybody that we're talking about has adequate arm strength. Jackson Dart at 3, what say you?
Jackson Dart leads the nation in completion percentage, yards per attempt, adjusted yards per attempt, yards per game, and quarterback rating. I mean, the dude's amazing. So right now you are right. My only issue, Dave, is that again, you are what a Heisman voter should be, because you think about what you see watching ball and what they can actually do. But put your mind in the minds of actual Heisman voters, and do you think they're going to be fair to Jackson Dart, or are they going to look at things on paper too much?
Oh man, that's a lot to unpack. What do you mean by on paper? Because I think on paper his numbers are going to be fantastic.
But they're going to overrate wins and the fact that he plays for Lane Kiffin.
I would hope, what Lane asked of his quarterbacks is a lot. Same for Josh Heupel. To me, I mean, excelling in those positions actually means more if you put up great numbers than being a caretaker like Stetson Bennett was at Georgia. Doesn't it?
I agree, but I don't think the voters see that. And also, again, I think that, look, Dart's numbers will come down somewhat, and I think people are going to hold against him his schedule strength of Ole Miss, and they're going to hold against him the fact that I think Ole Miss has 3 to 4 losses coming.
Okay. Who will I have number 1 as far as number 2 on my list?
Tennessee center Cooper Mays here. Third down.
Cam Ward, Miami. And if something were to happen to my number 1 selection, I think he's kind of the default guy. I know you like him a little bit more than I do, but he's a placeholder, in my opinion, until he does something really special. And he probably only has that opportunity against Clemson. So his Heisman candidacy pretty much rests on that game, doesn't it?
Clemson? Probably. You're right. And
who else do they play? Can you pull up their schedule, or I will?
Well, obviously they play Florida State, Dave, and I mean, that's a more. I'm trying to pull up their schedule now. I'm having some issues, actually. Funny enough,
right.
but what I will say,
yes,
yeah, Cam Ward is, guys. If y'all, well, they also play Louisville, who's not a bad team, by the way. And Duke is undefeated, so just throwing some names out there.
Yeah, no.
All SEC center Cooper Mays here.
All right. So my number 1 is Jaylen Milroe, and it's his to lose. It's his to lose. If he goes out there and balls out against Tennessee, Auburn, the rest of the teams on Alabama's schedule, I don't think anybody can catch him, and I think he might be that special. And you talk about Heisman voters. A lot of people are going to say, even if Nico Iamaleava and Jaylen Milroe had the exact same impact on their team, Milroe's probably a better story because you have Kalen DeBoer taken over for Nick Saban. Well, let me ask you, what's the better story? First-time Heisman winner at a football school like Tennessee, or would it be the story of Jaylen Milroe surviving a coaching change from the best coach of all time?
I honestly think that it would be the latter, and people would love that because everybody was ready to write off Jaylen Milroe. I plead guilty. I did not think Kalen DeBoer's offense and Jaylen Milroe could fit, and I thought it was a red flag when Kalen DeBoer said he would start Jaylen Milroe in the summer.
Well, you weren't necessarily wrong, dude. I mean, Jaylen Milroe would be okay in any system known to man. I don't care if we're talking about Tommy Frazier running the option or we're going run and shoot, quick reads. I mean, he has the impact that a Michael Vick or a Cam Newton has on that football team. And they're not likely going to have another quarterback like that coming up.
Well, what I thought was a red flag, though, was Kalen DeBoer runs an offshoot of the air raid. And to run the air raid, you have to, and you know this, Dave, even from Mike Leach's systems, whatever you want to say about him, whether or not you think the offense is a gimmick or not, the one thing a quarterback has to do is they have to read the whole field as an end of the air raid, don't they? You have to see the entire field, and every receiver is an option, aren't they, in the air raid?
I agree with that.
Jaylen Milroe, did he strike you as a guy that would go through his progressions and go through every option? That didn't seem like a fit. And Kalen DeBoer, and I still don't think that's a fit. But Kalen DeBoer totally revamped his offense to make Jaylen Milroe more of a first or second read guy, which is anathema to the offense Kalen DeBoer runs. So I got to give him credit for doing that.
Well, but you say that he has to make a lot of reads, but here's the thing. You have to keep a spy in on him. So that puts you in man situations more oftentimes than you would like. And then you got a defensive back looking at his man, which you're supposed to do, and running down the field, and Milroe scorches you. So then if they drop into a zone, I think they have the athletes to get open pretty quickly. So it's all
So you're saying the reads are, you're saying typically he can't make all the reads, but the reads are a heck of a lot easier for him right now because of his mobility and the athletes of the receivers.
Yes, and the way the defense has to react. I want to be sure and thank our friends at Ray Varner Ford, local you can trust, innovation you can afford. Absolutely right. And Joe Neubert Collision Center for 50 years. Neubert Collision Center has been East Tennessee's best choice for quality repair work and fantastic customer service. So what's on the show tomorrow, Caleb Calhoun? I know we'll have
quick question before we do that real quick.
Yes, we'll have Ollie Lane on the program tomorrow. Yes.
Travis Hunter's out on your list right now? I know it's a projection, so it's about where they will be. You don't think he'll be on the list at the end of the year? You don't think he'll be in New York?
I don't think so. And I think it's unfair, but it's voters' minds on what they think about Deion. So even if he continues on this path, and I know he's in the top 3 among the odds, I think that will hurt him. I think
do voters decide who actually goes to New York, or is there a Heisman committee?
Well, no, it's basically like, okay, so sometimes they'll take 3, sometimes they'll take 5. And it's based off how close, I guess they've taken 4 before. It's based off how close you are to the top. In other words, they're not going to have a situation where some dude goes all the way to New York and he has absolutely no chance of winning, and it's a joke. I mean, so you don't say every year you're taking 5. That means it's a closer race. Whereas if you're taking 3, somebody or 2 people, in the case of, let's say, Charles Woodson and Peyton Manning, have separated themselves from the pack. So they just took 3 then. So, no, there's not a committee. It's up to us idiot voters. He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. This has been a presentation of Off the Hook Sports. We'll see you tomorrow with Ollie Lane. Like and subscribe. Turn those notifications